Welcome back to the Speakeasy podcast. I'm about to say a sentence I don't think I ever thought I would say on this show, and that is that I have someone on today from the Bachelor franchise, right? Like, no shade. I know that I have a lot of friends that love The Bachelor. I've never really watched an episode. We talk about that in our conversation. It's just never really been my speed. But Ben Higgins has always kind of stood apart to me a little bit. And then he put his book out all about feeling alone even when you are very visible and seen and surrounded by people and seemingly admired and at the top of your game. And I remember being like, "Oh, yes, okay. I clock you. I see you," because that's a really hard thing to admit for a man. And then on that public of a stage, it's just really vulnerable, and vulnerability always kind of pulls me in. And so we ended up having a really great conversation, tying in parts of it from The Bachelor and his experience, but largely really what like growing up in the church and what we believe about how people speak into us and what community looks like. And then as you mature, figuring out how to actually walk that out. And so he was an absolute delight, which I knew he would be. And we had a great conversation. And I think like you don't have to have the Bachelor experience with a million followers to have felt the things that Ben is feeling or process them the way that he has processed them. And I think this is going to really meet a lot of people right where they are. Ben Higgins, and welcome to the Speakeasy.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, welcome. We were
Thanks
talking
for
a
having
little
me.
bit before we started recording, and I was telling you I've never watched an episode of The Bachelor.
Yeah.
And so I like that though. Like, I mean, I know, like, obviously I know who you are. I followed your career because you seem like one of the ones that are worth following along and listening to. Not that
Well, I
nobody else
appreciate
is. I don't mean that like disparagingly,
There's
but
no. There's some that I wouldn't follow.
yeah,
100%. That's a fair
right.
statement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. But what really fascinates me about you and your journey outside of that, you really do seem like just genuinely great, and we have a few friends in common that have affirmed that you really are. Like, it's so nice when you see somebody that seems great in media and then people are like, no, he like actually is like so fun and so nice and like loves Jesus. It's always just like a breath of fresh air. But you're out here talking about, and you have been for a long time, about like feeling alone when you were
Mm.
seen by millions of people. And he wrote a book about it, Alone in Plain Sight. The I loved the subtitle, "Searching for Connection When You're Seen But Not Known," which I think is really timely. We're kind of smack in the middle of a loneliness epidemic that I would say is like we keep expecting to get better, but kind of seems to just continue to stretch out post 2020.
Mhm.
And so you were on The Bachelor in 2016. Your book came out in 2021. What was happening that made this book come to life when like things should have been kind of at their peak?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's funny. I've been like I process a lot of like how things actually happen and why they happen when they happen. And it seems like the common denominator when I'm talking to people right now is like that God is just kind of opens up the door. Um, And sometimes those doors also are shut. And that's what happened when it came to this book. The door was opened. I wasn't looking to write a book. In fact, it really wasn't something that was even on my heart. But I spoke at an event that you're familiar with called MomCon.
Oh
Uh,
God.
and
Shout out
MomCon,
Mandy.
it's an incredible event that I've been a part of really ever since that day. But at that event, a publisher came up to me after I was on stage and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about writing a book?" And I said, "No, I don't know what I'd write about. I was on reality television. Like, what am I gonna say?" And they were like, "Well, let's just meet and talk." And so that's what we did. And during that whole conversation, I remembered that I had this journal that I had taken with me really through the show and before the show. And that's what I shared. I said, "Hey, I have a journal and it has some like really heavy thoughts in it and questions, but it also kind of talks about where I'm at in life. And I could put that into a book form. And they said, that sounds great. And that's really what Alone in Plain Sight
Wow.
was, as I read back through my emotions and experiences and the way I saw the world and the way I saw myself and the way I interacted with the divine and like all these things, I noticed that like there's a common thread there is where I felt like the outsider. Um, Even with my relationship with God, like I felt like the outsider. I felt like I was searching and looking and asking and communicating. But then there was this insecurity inside of me, like I don't understand it, I don't get it.
Mm.
And so that whole journal then became the book. And really unbeknownst to me, kind of like it happened. So if you haven't watched The Bachelorette or The Bachelor, there was a moment during that show where I had told The Bachelorette when I was on the first season I was on, I'd said, "Hey, I feel unlovable." I don't think I actually meant unlovable. I think what I really meant was like, I felt unlikable. I felt like the more
Mm.
she got to know me or the more people got to know me, the less they would like me. And part of that was just because I did feel like the outsider. And that, when I said that, I was very nervous for it to air. But what happened was the response was incredible. Like it made me feel less less alone than ever before in my life because everybody's like, "Hey, I feel the same way."
Yeah.
Um, and so when I say that to say when the book came out, I really didn't know until I really dug in how many people were feeling similarly to me. And I started writing it way before the pandemic hit. I started
Right.
writing it probably a good year and a half before the pandemic hit. And then all of a sudden, um, it got released. And that's what we did, a re-release, because the the truth is that a lot of people felt lonely during the pandemic. The truth was it was really hard to launch a book during the pandemic. And so we
Super
wanted to give
hard.
it we wanted to give it a
Yeah.
second shot.
Absolutely. I totally understand that. I mean, the person that wrote the foreword for my book that was my mentor for a super long time. I remember her book coming out during the pandemic and being like, "You work so hard on a book. You pour so
Hmm.
much into it." And so I'm glad that you're doing that because it's like give it another shot. And like I said earlier, the loneliness did not stop with the
No.
pandemic. Like it was
Yeah.
absolutely amplified, but just like God does uses everything that the enemy means for harm for good in his own ways, I think it also ripped the band-aid off a little bit.
Hmm.
And like people started talking about loneliness and being more connected digitally than ever, but it leaving these like gaping holes in people that they didn't know who they were without their accolades and accomplishments or their work. And so that conversation is just as relevant, if not more, today, because I don't think, like, I think we kept thinking, like, oh, like the loneliness will stop when we all come out of quarantine or but it hasn't because,
Hmm.
and I think that's like an increasingly digital world thing. Um, but going back to you saying that you felt unlovable, but it was actually unlikable, that I know that that resonates with people because I think a lot of time we don't know if we even really like ourselves. And also, does God like us?
Hmm.
I remember that being a really big kind of like turning point for me in my relationship with him was like, I know that you love me, kind of like you are love. You have to. It's like your whole
Hmm.
thing. But like, do you like me? Do you look at me and say, like, yeah, I did good with that
Hmm.
one? And I think if you don't get that confidence, then you end up just asking everybody else to like you.
Hmm. Yeah. Yes. Goodness. When you started this and you said, "Hey, we have friends in common," and they say that, that means a lot to me. I don't know if
Yeah.
there's like a better boost to me than having you say that at the very beginning of this because it still is very much like uh the demon inside of me or the
Yeah.
question inside of me. It still haunts me. It still speaks on my shoulder. It still whispers in my ear of hey, you weren't wrong, Ben. Like that
Oh,
insecurity comes from a place of truth, and
oh,
I know that's not true. It lives inside of me so oftentimes and in so many scenarios. And I think when what you just said, like there is no doubt. in my mind that God loves me. But would God want to hang out with me?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
like is, would God enjoy my quirks and my failures, and also, so, would God want to celebrate the joys and successes? And that's
Yeah.
and asking that question, I think, is such a really big question that so many people ask and maybe can't even put words to it. I mean, I had the benefit of writing the book and thinking very hard on how to communicate um, those feelings and those questions and those thoughts. And I spent a ton of time in silence. And when I wrote the book, I spent a ton of time like slowing down, taking out any outside noise and just letting like my prayers and my thoughts like flood over me so that I could somehow get in touch with like what exactly am I trying to say in all this?
Hmm.
And I wonder, for me it was really healing. It wasn't easy, but I wonder how many like people that are operating in this world of busyness and chaos and social like interactions. I wonder how many people actually just slow down for a second, and say, okay, what exactly is it that I'm feeling and thinking? Why
Yeah.
exactly do I feel a little off? Why exactly is it that I'm sitting in my house, for all day so that I don't run into anybody? Like, what exactly is going on inside of me? And for me, I did it and was able to write a book, so I had an excuse. I would hope that I would have done it outside of even write a book, but I also just want to encourage everybody to take the time to process those things, because the truth could be difficult, but it also could be freeing. And that's what I experienced when I wrote it.
Yeah, you're hitting on something that has been a really big theme in my like little internet ecosystem for the
Mm.
last almost year. God, I not jokingly say that like God threw the e-brake on my life last year. I think he had been asking me to slow down for way longer than that, and I just wasn't listening.
Mm.
And so it finally was like like we're slowing this down. I've just always been like really driven and go and do, and it was like at the detriment of my family and my mental health and my relationship with God. um but I was actually thinking when you were talking about like posing that original question, like or not even question, but like statement that you felt unlovable, that I feel like since I've slowed down, I'm like, I feel like I'm processing in real time, but like since I've slowed down, I don't feel that way as
Mm.
much on like on the likable side of things. That sometimes the hard truth is that like I didn't really like who I was when I was like hustling and bulldozing over people and like getting things done, and often maybe even like manipulating outcomes so
Mhm.
that I would feel better about it or whatever it was. And it's like, no, this slowed down, severely humbled through series of events, um, kind of just trying to sit at Jesus's feet version of myself is a lot more likable to me, right? And it's not that I wasn't worthy of love before or likable before, but I wonder how often that tension is God kind of inviting you to like, well, if you chilled out a little bit, if
Mm.
you drew near to me instead of, always trying to do it your way, you may find yourself a little bit more at peace because you'll be so like closer to who he actually made you to be. And that really only comes
Well,
from slowing down.
100%. And you just said like a lot there that I think is like so valuable to the people that are around you and that listen and that you do life with, is you're able to admit like, hey, you were manipulating.
Yeah.
And especially in a Christian world, like we just don't say it.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, like when I'm doing it, right? When I'm not like a version of myself that's like healthy and not a version of myself that's living in walk step with what God has called me to, um, and I mess up, I feel even more alone because then I listen and like try to like figure out, I'm like, I'm the only one that's manipulating anybody.
Oh
And why am
yeah.
I that guy? I'm a terrible human. Like nobody else is admitting to this, so I must be the only one out there that has ever treated somebody poorly. Um, And I'm the only one that has ever had this thought in my head that's
Or
like
this
not
struggle.
and and as we start to communicate it, as we start to talk about it, we realize when people are willing, we're like, no, we're not alone. It doesn't mean that it needs to continue. It doesn't mean that it's an act that like we're like, okay, so other people are doing it, so I'm good too.
Right, right.
Paul's pretty clear on that,
I
right?
was
Like
just
Paul
thinking that.
speaks very clearly on that whole idea of it doesn't mean that we continue,
Yeah.
but what it does do is at least it helps us feel less alone when we do it so that we're not sitting there in this like especially somebody who's like a deeply really desires to follow Jesus, we get really hard on ourselves because we're like, we've messed up.
Yep.
We're worthless.
And I'm the only one.
I'm the only one. I
Yeah.
mean, goodness, everybody else seems to get it out there. But when we actually get vulnerable, when we actually get to with people that are not afraid to communicate, even some of the like the dark stuff, then we realize, okay, we're not alone, and maybe together we can fix it. Like maybe
Yeah.
together we can get a little better.
Yeah. Well, and then we get to like learn from each other also.
Mm,
Like God gave us community so intentionally.
yeah.
And I see a lot of this as like we're shoving all of our stuff in a closet and we're trying to keep it in the corner. But then, like, if you know anything about the hard stuff, it thrives in the dark. It
Yeah.
takes root, it grows rotten fruit. Like, and the second I just see it as like dragging it out of the closet, and that is hard and it is humbling and it is painful. But when you do it and you like put it in the light, first of all, God can like disinfect it, right? And He can do that when it's in the darkness, and He has, but a lot of the time like he wants us to get honest and real with him about it, but then other people can go, oh my gosh, my closet looks exactly the same,
Mm,
and that eliminates shame. Like shame
yeah.
immediately dies because you're
Yeah.
not the only one.
Yeah. It's like it's the version of the church that I love being a part of.
Yeah.
There's so and like you can read this, but like there's so much about the church that confuses me,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. But yet there's this beauty and like this gift that is the church, and there's so much good to it. I have this thing I'm processing right now in my life where I'm like, okay, the church is known more for what it's against than what it's for, and I think that's a
Yeah.
problem.
100%.
Um, and one of the things it's for is community. It's for us uh, holding each other accountable. It's for us being the body that's working together to build this kingdom that is beautiful and flowing with the fruits of the Spirit. And if you are familiar with the fruits of the Spirit, you realize that like those things are like desired by everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Christian, non-Christian, believer,
Yeah.
not believer. Like everybody today's in this pursuit of I want to find my own happiness. I would maybe say what you're really calling for is like you want to find the peace, the love, the
Yeah.
joy. Like you're looking for those things. And those are, ancient wisdoms.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I really love this idea where the church is revealing our closets, to use your, picture. We're messy and going through it together. And then I realize I'm not alone. And then we're lifting each other up and we're allowing God to restore um, and revive these things that like we've hidden for so long. Because ultimately, I think we all desire to cleanse our own behaviors. And how fun is it in life? Like, and as I get older, it just feels like it happens less and less. But how fun is it in life when we have those major victories where we're like, okay, I've treated this person poorly. You call them, you apologize, you restore that relationship. Like the feeling in that is like, no, this was good. This was
Right.
of God. This is something sacred. Um, and I think, to go back to it, we can one of our best, and the book speaks a lot on this, like one of our best ways to do that is through this community and through this community of vulnerability and honesty.
Yeah. Well, and what's really interesting watching, even though I haven't watched the show, I've like, you can't help but like these people kind of, like enter your orbit.
Algorithm.
Yeah, exactly. And what I think everybody deals with, but okay, so there's the people that I feel like they position themselves as the villain, right? Like that's the
Mm,
part they decide to play. But the ones that like seem to really like truly be good people or trying to do good things, the truth is like you're going to take it from both sides. Like you're going to have people that love you
Mhm.
that are maybe even like obsessed with you, right? But then you're also going to have people that hate every single thing that you do, that
Mhm.
tear you apart, that tear you down. And so you're in this season of like admitting these really hard things, and you have this outside input coming
Mhm.
in that's like affirmation and pulling you apart. What part did that play? Because that's another part to the like community, not necessarily church body, but just like living, being seen and known, that becomes a interesting variable.
Yeah, there's a lot of criticism and a lot of praise.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Actually, at MomCon again this year, which is not on purpose, but there is some very impactful moments that happen at that for a lot of people. And
Oh yeah.
um, I I co-hosted it this last year with a incredibly talented person, writer and thinker, Carrie Scott Garcia, and I was telling her this. There was like a conversation we were having about one of the speakers on stage, and I was like talking through some of the points that the speaker was making with Carrie, and I was like, I was asking her these questions about the public like image,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think Carrie would mind me saying this. When she first met me, I think she was very like, I don't know, cautious, hesitant,
Yeah.
like just
Yeah.
like, wait, the Bachelor, that guy is at MomCon with me? Like, how
Yeah.
does this work? And I think that's very fair.
Yeah.
But I was walking through kind of the that same question that you just asked me about how do you kind of balance the praise and the criticism? And she said that years ago there was a mentor in her life that told her, "Hey, people are going to throw um uh what roses at your feet um and rocks at some how did she say it? People are going to throw roses at your feet. Don't pick them up.
Mm.
Pretty much, that's not the. I'm forgetting how she said it right now, and I just was literally talking about this yesterday. The point is, like, don't pick up the praise and don't pick up the criticism was the whole point of
Exactly.
it. Like, pick up
Yeah.
neither, which gets really hard.
Yeah.
And what I what I've learned through that, and the picture she painted was so like perfect for the situation I was in is you almost, for me, again, I started just to dismiss everything, which also wasn't healthy, which also
Yeah.
wasn't good, which also cut me off. And I kept my friends who, could speak into me, and they did at times. And I met my wife, my now wife, like soon after my breakup from the show. Been about it was like a year and a half, maybe. So she can obviously speak into me too, but you get pretty calloused,
Yeah.
honestly, and you start to doubt even more everybody's words, the praise and the criticism, um, and that's honestly still a journey I'm on where um, I don't, I'm not as trusting, I'm not as I'm not as easily able to listen and receive. And I'm healing in that right now. That is
Yeah.
a season I'm in where it gets really difficult. You can get really beat down, and then all of a sudden you get really lifted up, and then you get really beat down again.
Yeah.
And I would almost assume my life story is unique because it's mine, but I would honestly assume take away the mass of it, like the millions of people that watch the show. I would assume most people um, have
100%.
the same experience. If it's millions of people, if it's five people, if it's
Yep.
one,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm alone in that. I think most people probably are processing how do I actually interact with other humans and allow them to speak into me, and do I actually trust them to speak into me, and who do I trust to speak into me, and do they have my best intentions in mind? Are they trying? That's kind of like my daily like thought when
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
in these
Well, and
moments.
that was part of why I asked is like that is not an exclusive to, let's just use the word fame, even though it's like that. Like that is not
Mhm.
exclusive to fame. It just
Mhm.
isn't. And it also, I think, I do think it functions on like a spectrum. I think it's understandable that you're more callous because you're more inundated with it. You're more accessible, you're more seen. So there's more input. But the reality is that you can experience this I mean, I don't know that people gather around a water cooler anymore, but like you can experience this around the water cooler, right? You can
Mhm.
experience this in your family. There's a lot of that in family, I think, especially now in the climate that we're living in. And so I've talked pretty openly about my experience. Like I think I have like a smaller but same experience where um and I'll tell you, since you're in process, I'm still in process about it, but what God really showed me was this image of a house, and that like the house is my relationship with people. And I think because I grew up in the church, I had this very distorted idea that I had to give credence to everyone, that
Mhm.
like that
Mhm.
love and humility was listening to at least like evaluating every bit of feedback to see like, okay, is there truth, are there bones that I should pick out but like keep the meat? And God kind of got me to a point where he was like, you got to stop. This is ripping you apart. You're letting voices in, you're not guarding your heart, which is
Mhm.
biblical. And that people have position, and that when we as Christians specifically don't have the wisdom and discernment to put them in their proper place, then we can't run on mission as effectively as
Mhm.
God wants us to. And so he was like, there are people that, yeah, like there's like, and like the numbers get smaller as you go out. So like if you start in your bedroom, there's like really like one person should really be like
Mhm.
comfortable in your bedroom, and then like a couple more in your living room, and then a couple more on your
Mhm.
front door. But then there are people that need to be like outside the gate. Like you don't get to
Yeah.
come in, like you have not earned the right. And seeing it laid out that way really helped me turn over this like all people always get access to me. And so now
Mhm.
I kind of say like, you matter to God, but you don't really matter to me. Like you're
Mhm.
you this faceless person, or this person that doesn't know me or has no investment in me. No, like you don't get to tell me anything good or bad about
Mhm.
myself. And that can get tricky because you want to be like, you can come in if you're going to be nice, but
Yeah.
like it can't
Sure.
work that way. Like they have to stay where they are. And then that allows you to I just look at the example of Jesus, and he had 12 that were with him all the time, but he had those three that were like his boys that he was super tight with, that those are the people that he drew away with, that those are the people that he had more intimate conversation with, which honestly like loops right back around to the loneliness. Is like, also, how are we defining loneliness? Do you think you need to have a house full in order
Mhm.
to not be lonely? Or is what God has given you, which may be just a handful of quality people that are invested in you, that have walked with you, is that enough? The ones that have like earned the right to speak those things into you.
Well, I think what you just said about house is like really just a really like interesting thing for me to think through is I think it's a great picture. Um, you know, for me, it's as you even said, like, what are we defining loneliness as? I got married in the midst of all this, and that really like kind of proved a lot of my skepticism about myself wrong. Like I had
Mm.
somebody that was wonderful saying, yeah, you know what? I like you and love you enough to want to spend the
I
rest of my
like you
life
and
with
I
you.
love you. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's a big deal.
Yeah.
That kind of squashes any doubts that I had, but it seeped into my marriage where I still question like, Are you sure you made the right decision? Not me asking her.
Yeah.
I know I made the right decision. But
Yeah.
I'm still sometimes confused on why she said yes to this.
One of the things that we are really big about here at the Speakeasy is breaking out of the matrix, is reclaiming self reliance or doing things a different way, however you can. And health insurance is a huge part of that. The way that the current system is set up is so predatory, and it keeps people sick and small and unable to do what they need to do in order to achieve health and freedom. And that is where Crowd Health comes in. Crowd Health is a health insurance alternative that is breaking the system wide open. So when you sign up for Crowd Health, you get access to so much. You get a team of health bill negotiators, low cost prescriptions, lab testing tools, a database of low cost, high quality doctors. And then if something major happens, you pay the first 500 and then the crowd comes in and helps you with the rest of it. So this open enrollment, take your power back, join Crowd Health to get started today for $99 for your first 3 months by using the code SPEAKEASY at joincrowdhealth.com. That is joincrowdhealth.com with the code SPEAKEASY. Crowd Health is not insurance, but you can opt out and take your power back.
But, I do have, I guess, the gift or whatever you want to call it. I got handed this platform, and a million people are able, with a click of a button, to see what's going on in my life and share feedback on that.
Yeah.
And that hasn't helped like
No.
me feel more accepted by any means. Even when, I share something and it feels like it gets like a favorable response of positivity, it doesn't help me go to bed at night and be like, oh yeah, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
But I think to like process through that would be to say like so much of our life, all of us is that like what sharing something and getting the feedback through the social media. And I know for me it doesn't fulfill, and I haven't met anybody that says it fulfills. And I know some really influential influencers who have a lot more followers than me who it doesn't fulfill. It's very much a job. And so that is my point is that's not the answer.
Right.
We are not able to stay like to be connected in the way that I think we were made through the lens of a phone or through the lens of a computer. No, we need to sit with people. We need to have those pe 4 or 5 people in our home to break bread like Jesus did and to discuss the topics that you and I are discussing today
Yeah.
and to walk life with each other. And we need to get back to that. Um, and we also need to have spaces where we feel and either create the spaces yourself or enter into the spaces that other people have created where we feel like we can be ourselves
Hmm.
without that little like voice inside of us being like, okay, don't say this because this might really rock the boat. There are that is wisdom and that's proper in some situations, but we still need opportunities to be able to release everything going on in our heads, to process it together and having the humility to also maybe be corrected. I think one of the most interesting things that's happened in my lifetime is where we sit today, where it feels like disagreements uh, are capable of breaking relationships so quickly. And these relationships should never be broken. They're not fragile. They never were. They're built on love and they're built on years of life together. But goodness gracious, I've heard over and over again where it's like, no, I don't talk to them anymore because we disagreed on this topic. And they just don't see the world the right way. And I'm like, well, maybe not, but maybe you don't either.
Yeah.
And where have we gone to where we can't be free, especially in those close relationships, to be truly ourselves,
Yeah.
and to listen and learn and be corrected and to forgive and keep enjoying each other's company.
Yeah. I mean, I had that experience. I've told the story before. My best friend since kindergarten stopped talking to me in 2016. And but then it's super cool and redemptive because she ended up coming back around in like 21 or 22 and just apologizing and being like, I got swept up in all of it and
Mhm.
I was wrong and I'm sorry. And, obviously, I don't know that relationships can go back to like exactly what they were before, but just
Mhm.
that, like, I always like to like slip that story in because I think people lose hope. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, like you can be good to people even when they hurt you for not great reasons and or walk away from you when we have the foundation that we should have been able to figure it out. and that like God really can do whatever he wants to, and he'll bring people around that you like kind of maybe have given up hope that they
Mhm.
can. But you brought up something that else that I wanted to touch on before we wrap up, which is like the performative aspect of
Mhm.
loneliness.
Mhm.
Um, and how we the I think that's what's so admirable about you writing the book and having these conversations is like admitting loneliness feels like weakness, at least for
Mhm.
some people. Like it feels like cringe, like, I don't want to say that like, look, there's like, I've got a family and there's people, or like,
Mhm.
I've got a million followers on Instagram, or I was on this TV show, like, ugh. And so we perform and we act like everything is fine. And what I have found from experience is that that kills community real fast.
Mhm. Yeah. I wish this, and there's I don't know how active you are on social media, but my actually my sister's brother, and his girlfriend, and my my wife's brother and his girlfriend and my wife and I are on this text thread. And for a bit, it stopped because my algorithm got all messed up, and I was just like rage clicking all the time. But
I
it
feel
was,
that.
and all four of us are deep believers and lovers of Jesus. And this thread ended up just getting shared all these like kind of cringy Christian videos that are very performative, that are
Uh-huh.
very like popular right now. Um, and again, I was just like rage clicking, to be honest with you. I
Yeah.
was like watching and be like, this is not fun to watch, and how can somebody do this? And my point is, I wish I would have wrote about that in the book, but it wasn't necessarily like when I wrote the book, it wasn't a topic that really came to my mind that we would
Yeah.
perform in life like all the time. I think it maybe was true. I just didn't think about it. And you're spot on because so much of our life is a performance, especially when we're unhealthy. And going back to like, are we entering into rooms where we can be truly ourselves without like having that little whisper of, "Hey, I can't say this here," or "How am I going to say it?" Like,
Or like
just we're
nobody here
perform.
likes you.
Yeah, or yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so performance becomes almost this where it gets really blurry is we think that we're living life in wisdom, but we're actually just performing, and we forget who we are in the process, and we
Yep.
forget who we've always desired to be because the performance brings more likes, or it's a safer performance than maybe what we actually experience. And going back to what you said at the beginning, I am guilty of this, of performing, especially when you're have a camera shoved in your face and you're like, well, not only is my friends and family going to see this, but millions of people are, and I need to
Yeah.
make sure I say XYZ. I'm guilty of this performance myself. But it honestly ends up being completely isolating because you look back and you go, I've lost myself in the process. I actually don't know what I think and feel and who I am. It's a very isolating experience. And I think so many of us, if we actually broke it down, said that is why maybe one of the reasons why I am feeling lonely and disconnected is because they like a version of me that I know I'm performing,
Yeah.
but it's not, I know inside that's not really who I am. And they haven't seen, going back to my time on the show, they haven't seen the real me because the more of the real me they would get to know, the less they would like me.
Hmm.
Um, which is also so like great when you started this out and you said, "Hey, I met some of your friends and they said they actually like you, and they like me when when I am not on camera and when I'm not
Yeah.
doing an interview and when I'm
They do,
not."
Ben. They really
Yeah,
do. Like they
that's a big
love
deal.
you. Yeah, that is a
It's
big
a big
deal.
deal.
I think that's
Yeah, it's good to hear. And I don't know how often like we now as we get older, especially we get to hear that.
yeah.
Uh, I just don't think it's something like that that's that common to hear where
Yeah.
somebody's like, "Hey, I actually like that guy. I would love to hang out with him again."
Yeah. And like want to like let my kids be around him, or
Yeah.
have a conversation with him or whatever. And I think that I like I said earlier, I think there's this like sliding scale for, like you're on one end and then there's, like the everyday person that's never been on The Bachelor on the other end. They're still performing.
Yeah.
They're
Oh
still
yeah.
walking into rooms and not feeling safe to be who they really are. And I was reading in Colossians this morning. I'm really bad at references, but I think it was like 122. And it was talking about like that chapter. Colossians 1 is all about like the divinity of Christ. And,
Mhm.
but also like does a really good job of tying in like what that means for us. And it said, um, I'm gonna butcher it, but it pretty much said, that he did all of this. Like he lived the perfect life, he died the perfect death, rose from the dead, defeated sin, so that we can be presented holy and blameless and faultless, was the
Mhm.
words that it used. And as I was digging into that, it really clicked for me that like Jesus is the one presenting us before the only one that matters, which is God. He's making our case. We don't have to make our own case. His death and the resurrection made the case for us. And that God sees us as those things, holy, blameless, faultless. And that I really think it's not a trick. The key to all of this is like, do you believe that? Do
Mhm.
you believe that in the end, the cross was enough to speak for you, to make your case for you? Like that is the end of performing. Because what is there to perform? Like I can walk in surrender in the fullness of who God created me to be and how he covered me, because that's how he already sees me. And then like I think what comes after that is like, man, getting to the point where you're like, it's okay if you don't like me. Like
Mhm.
that's a really wild place to get. And I think I'm like it's within spitting distance. Like
Yeah.
I'm not there by any means, but like I can see, like I've had moments of like clarity where I'm like, oh, actually, it's okay that you don't like me. Like
Mhm.
I like me and God likes me, and oh, like I hate to say it, but I think that's enough.
Yeah. You know what I really want to ask when I hear or get the sense of when somebody like really just doesn't enjoy being around me. And I've only had the opportunity to do it a few times because is to say like, hey, why?
Yeah,
Like, I want you to feel free to tell
yeah,
me exactly why. And we might just not be right to be friends, and that's okay.
yeah,
But I also want you to have the freedom to tell me, like, hey, this is why my company is not enjoyable to you, or why. And I kind of wish people would ask me that, like, hey,
yeah,
why,
yeah.
like, and really be interested in hearing, like, it just, we're not maybe made for everybody. Um, but to go back to the book, um, we are made for people, and
Mm,
there is, as we said, this beautiful gift of community that God has created and that is available, and it is so important and vital for us as humans to live within. And that community, I mentioned the book, like for me, there's four friends that I could call at any moment who I know would enjoy celebrating my successes and
that's
also
huge.
mourning with me when mourning's necessary. That's
Yeah,
four people. That's four people that have not maybe proven, but they've been around me and shown me enough support in the good and the bad. So where I say, hey, I know of who you are. And I've asked them to play that role in my life. I've asked them
yeah,
to be that intimate with me, to help me be a better husband, better father, better friend, better son, all these things that are vital, better employee or employer. Um, and that's for people. And then from there, that community can grow. Um, And so, but that doesn't mean everybody's invited in, and it doesn't mean
yeah,
everybody wants in.
yeah,
Um, and that's okay. It is.
yeah,
It's fine. I'm with you. Growing up in the church and trying to my darndest to do the right thing, I thought everybody needed to have a piece of my flesh,
yep,
and that I needed to give a piece of my flesh to everybody in return. And it stretched me really thin, and it felt very unhealthy. And I think when it feels very unhealthy, or feels tiresome, or when it takes you away from home too much, away from your family, all of a sudden you're like, hey, maybe
yeah.
this wasn't what God was trying to tell me to do.
Yeah. No, I think if that's like the big takeaway from this conversation, that's huge and really helpful. I think there are a
Mhm.
lot of us that grew up in the church that maybe not like explicitly, but it was like sometimes it was subliminally that like sometimes I think it was like Jesus let them hang him on the cross, so should you. And it's like, well, it's like he did it so I don't have to. And
Yeah.
also I'm not Jesus. And also this is tearing me apart and not making it really hard for me to show up as who I want to be for the people that are close and that matter. And so
Yeah.
I think that I think the people that resonate with this and feel that way should get your book. I'm so glad you're
Yeah.
doing a re-release because
Thank
it's a
you.
great book and it needs the it needs the non-pandemic version of a
Thank you.
launch. But yeah, thank you for your time in this
I appreciate
conversation.
being here. The audio version also, I read it
Oh,
and I always
nice.
point people to it because that was the hardest part about writing a book is, I mean, I speak for a living. I read ads all day. Reading my book out loud was not easy. And so if you're if you're a walker driver and you want to listen to the book, make sure you go check out the audio version of Alone in Plain Sight.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben.
Hey, thank you. Great to spend time with you.